Hello! In this video tutorial, we're going to be talking about Age of Empires. Age of Empires, and specifically, we're going to be looking at the Mongols. They're a cavalry archer civilization, so we'll just draw a few horse archers in here, and maybe we'll give them some riders, and a few bows, of course. And maybe a nice flowing river. Make it red. And maybe a happy village right there with a few different houses. And some nice houses there. And maybe make a little wall around it. And then we'll try to make our drawing historically accurate. And we'll add in some nice flames. Sweeping up there into the wind. Perfect. The Mongols are a very popular civilization on a few different map types, and as always I'll be going through their civ bonuses, unique unit, and tech tree. The team bonus is that the scout and light cavalry line has +2 line of sight. Now I think this is one of the strongest team bonuses in the game because it helps so much with Dark Age scouting, which means more consistent starts for your whole team, with fewer of those starts where you can't find your resources. +2 line of sight sounds modest, but really it's changing the line of sight radius from 4 tiles to 6. A 50% larger radius of sight means you're less likely to be unlucky and go right past something important, and it also means in a quick pass through an enemy's town that you're seeing 50% more. Theoretically, it does help your scout rush and any light cavalry, and then any late game hussars as well, but the most impact is to the early scouting boost. You might not think it at first, but it's quite a strong economic bonus for your whole team out of the gate. Moving on to their civ bonuses now. The first one is that cavalry archers fire 20% faster. Normally cavalry archers fire about once every 2 seconds, unless you're, wait for it, the Mongols. Despite the tech tree saying it's 20% faster, it's actually even better, and it's 25%. We can see a Mongol cavalry archer is firing 5 times, where a Hun is firing 4 before they fire in unison again. We can also find the reload time and see it's 80% of the reload time of the Huns, which means it fires 25% more shots over a long time interval. So if it's actually 25% faster, does that mean with equal resources, the Mongols can beat the Huns' 25% cheaper cavalry archers? Well, no. 10 times out of 10, the Huns win with equal resources. In fact, in the Castle Age, with even 25% faster firing, the Mongols can't beat a Hun army with even 17% more units. Just remember the Huns are always going to be better in the Castle Age for cavalry archers. Things are even more dicey in Imperial Age for Mongols because they're missing the last cavalry archer armor technology, so they aren't technically fully upgraded, and Huns get an even bigger cavalry archer discount in Imperial Age, so we can't really say Mongols have the best cavalry archer line at any point in the game, even with that faster firing bonus. In fact, in the Forgotten Empires expansion, where Japanese have bloodlines and thus fully upgraded heavy cavalry archers, the Japanese can even win with equal numbers of cavalry archers. So Mongols don't even look top tier anymore for cavalry archers by the late game. Now that's not quite the whole story, since the damage output of the Mongol cavalry archer is 25% higher, so as long as they're safe, they have the highest damage output. But yeah, they're a bit squishy. I'll be comparing the cavalry archer to the Mongol unique unit in a bit, so we'll leave it there with the cavalry archers for now. The second civ bonus is that their light cavalry have 30% more HP. Now 30% is pretty awesome. In Castle Age, statistically the Mongol light cavalry is clearly better than the generic fully upgraded one, and 8 on 8 Mongols end up with 2 or 3 left. In the Forgotten Empires expansion, cheaper Magyar light cavalry beats Mongols with equal resources, but other than that, Mongol light cavalry is clearly the strongest in the game, hands down. The Hussar also gets 118 HP instead of the 95 for a regular fully upgraded Hussar. Putting equal resources against each other with the Magyars, we see they still beat the Mongols in post-Imperial by quite a bit, but again, the Mongols beat the Huns and more generic Hussars consistently. It's obvious from this that the Mongols have the strongest light cavalry and Hussar line in Age of Conquerors or HD. Alright, moving on. But wait a minute, light cavalry and Hussars don't usually fight other light cavalry. How do they do in a more realistic matchup of what they really could be facing? Well, against halberdiers, they tend to do slightly better overall than the Huns, though there's a bit of variability, of course. Mongol Hussars don't get the last cavalry armor upgrade, but the lack of 1 melee armor doesn't make a huge difference when the halberdier already gets a 32 attack bonus. Against Arbalests, things get interesting though. Because Arbalests do 10 damage and Mongols don't have that last cavalry armor tech, Arbalests do 6 damage to Mongol Hussars and only 4 to Huns. Unlike everything we've seen to this point, Huns and other civilizations with fully upgraded Hussars do better than Mongols in this situation, because they take 24 shots instead of 20. Against a town center, it's the same idea. 15 Hun Hussars can take down a fully garrisoned town center, whereas 15 Mongol Hussars can't. So we can conclude that Hun Hussars are better against ranged units and Mongols are better against melee. Alright, moving on. But wait, of course, there's an exception. If an archer does 13 damage or more, like a hand cannoneer does, the Mongol Hussar becomes better again because the effect of pierce armor becomes less significant. This is getting a bit confusing now, but overall, I'd say the extra 30% HP at the cost of the final cavalry armor tech feels more like a trade-off than a bonus. If you're playing Mongols, try to keep in mind the Hussars are going to do extra well against melee and gunpowder units, and not as well against archers and town centers. But their light cavalry is always going to be great. Their final civ bonus is that their hunters work 50% faster. You may remember I've already looked at this bonus before. In the case where you have 8 villagers gathering from the boar, a generic civilization ends with about 10 less food, and the extra time saved for the Mongols would let them gather in the neighborhood of 50-ish wood from a tree around the town center. To put that in even more context, in 6 minutes a generic civilization can use 8 villagers to take the food from 2 boar and 3 deer within a short walking distance from the town center or a mill. You could consider that a reasonable amount of hunting in the Dark Age for a typical game. The Mongols, with the same start, get about 40 more food out of the boar and deer, and because the Mongol hunters work so fast, they still have time to chop 200 wood from the nearby trees before the other civilizations catch up on food. Obviously, you won't necessarily use that extra villager time to chop wood, but it helps put the effect size in a way that's comparable to other civilizations' Dark Age bonuses, like the Huns and Japanese. The other side to it is that the Mongols had the food gathered a minute and a half before a normal civilization would, so this would let the Mongols get up to 500 food to advance faster than other civilizations, and the extra free villager time would offset the economic impact of going up with 1 or 2 fewer villagers than your opponent. So that's their bonuses. It's a nice mix of a good economic team bonus, a couple of military boosts that don't end up helping as much as you might think in the late game, and a great hunting bonus that gives them an amazing early game. To get a sense of why people love Mongols as a late game military force though, we're going to have to move on to their unique unit. The Mongol unique unit is the Mangudai. Mangudai? Mangudai. I don't know how to say it. You know, these guys. Comparing their stats with the regular cavalry archer, we see in Castle Age you're getting more HP, and in Post-Imperial you're getting 1 more attack than the heavy cavalry archer, but otherwise they seem almost identical. Hidden behind that though are some secret factors that make them much better than the normal cavalry archer. The game doesn't really advertise most of these, so they're kinda secret, and we should keep these just between you and me, and maybe anybody else that watches this video. The first major reason the Mangudai are secretly better than cavalry archers is their bonus against siege. They're completely different units against siege than cavalry archers are. Yeah, you're saying that's not really a secret, it says that right here, but come on, who seriously reads those? If we look at it, the elite Mangudai are doing 5 extra damage against all siege units, and 6 extra damage if the siege unit has low pierce armor. That means a group of 6 Mangudai can take out an onager in 1 shot, as opposed to the 15 heavy cavalry archers needed to do the same thing. Normally onagers are a great counter to cavalry archers, so new players would think to use them, but they just melt against Mangudai because of that hidden bonus, so that can be a little frustrating. Yeah, that's the feeling. Besides the bonus to siege though, they have lots of other little factors that make them better than regular cavalry archers. They also move slightly faster, which is important for doing a hit and run on infantry and more map mobility. It's not much, but it's there. They also have much higher accuracy than cavalry archers, and at 6 tiles away, the Castle Age Mangudai are 97% accurate, whereas the cavalry archer is 68% accurate. That makes thumb ring a little bit less of a priority, though you'll want to pick it up eventually for the faster firing rate. They also seem to readjust faster than cavalry archers to a new target, and look like they fire as soon as you click at the start of their animation instead of at the end. That makes them easier to micromanage against both siege and infantry, and the unit just feels easier to use. Switching back to using heavy cavalry archers kind of feels like playing with lag, and you're liable to have that situation where they stop to do a shot, but the unit's coming faster than you'd like, so you have to back them up before they actually fire. With Mangudai, they turn around and fire instantly, and then you can back up. No hassle. Man, that's gotta be annoying for the other player. You might think the Mangudai should be more expensive than the cavalry archer, but they're actually cheaper in terms of gold, and the cost of the upgrade in Imperial Age is comparable. When you put it all together, except for being produced from an archery range and being slightly cheaper in terms of wood, there's no obvious situation where you would prefer heavy cavalry archers to elite Mangudai. The Mongols end up with a unit that's pretty overpowered against siege and still very strong against pike units, both statistically and in terms of easier micro. That pretty much leaves skirmishers as a cost-effective counter, and camels as well, although camels have pretty low pierce armor, and it's not a perfect counter, so you'll need a significant group of them. They're also liable to get micro down if the Mongol player is paying attention. That can be frustrating. Khaaaan! Paladins can do okay, and in an open area they beat Mangudai cost-effectively with gold, so that's one option you can try. But with powerful late-game civilizations like the Mongols, your best bet is to attack them early before all their strong bonuses kick in. Oh wait, their Dark Age bonus makes them really strong early game too. Generally, as a rule, late-game civilizations tend to be weak to early aggression, but I guess we shouldn't be surprised that Mongols are the exception. Looking now at their unique technology, the Mongols' unique tech is called Drill, and it adds 50% to workshop unit speed. That affects how quickly it moves around the map, but it does not change the firing rate in any way. The tech applies to the Onager line, the Scorpions, and Rams. Fully garrisoned with 6 infantry, a Mongol siege ram moves almost exactly the same speed as a horse. This definitely gives new meaning to the term ramming speed.
Prepare for ramming speed! Ramming speed!
Sir, there's another starship coming in.
Now that's more like it. The second unique technology available in the Forgotten Empires expansion is Nomads. Now this one's a little strange. It costs 300 wood and makes it so that destroyed houses don't reduce your population limit. So you can build a house and have it destroyed, and if you build a new one, your population cap picks up right where it was. It's an interesting idea, and it's probably worth picking up. It could come in handy if you're rebuilding your base, which could possibly happen on a nomad map, no pun intended, or maybe in a free-for-all, since those often involve lots of rebuilding. You could also use it to open up more space as well, which might be useful in some situations, but I suspect it was felt that Mongols didn't really need to be buffed anymore, so there you go. Speaking of the Forgotten Empires, just to take a look at the changes here quickly, there were a couple of tech tree ones worth mentioning and a major reduction to the Mangudai. First of all, the elite cannon galleon was removed. Second, the Mangudai siege bonus of +5 is limited only to rams now, and +1 to every other siege, making onagers a practical counter again. The third is that the cavalry archer in general is a bit cheaper, but not to the point that it would be better than the Mangudai. They still cost the same gold, and you would still probably not use cavalry archers in a typical game. Now I'm going to move on and take a look at their tech tree. As always, I'm going to start with the archers. Mongols consistently have good archers really throughout the game. Their hunting bonus makes their early archer rush above average in the feudal age. In Castle Age, their archer tree is perfect, including being one of the only few civilizations that could even think about doing a cavalry archer rush. And in the Imperial Age, their unique unit is very difficult to counter. That looks like strong archery options throughout the entire game, and personally, I'd give them an A- for archers. The biggest thing holding them back is the lack of the final archer armor, which makes their elite skirmishers and arbalists lag a bit behind in the late game. Moving on to infantry, their champions are fully upgraded, which is great, but on the other hand, there's no halberdiers. Camels sort of make up for that, but camels cost a lot of gold, so it's still a problem you have to work around when you're countering cavalry. For me, the infantry is a pretty straightforward B. Taking a look at cavalry, the Mongol cavalry starts off amazing, with the best scout rush of any civilization because of a quick advance time with the extra food and more line of sight. In Castle Age, they also have perfect knights and some extra resources and scouting early on, which makes going for knights quite strong. If they don't like that, they still have the option of light cavalry and access to camels. In the Imperial Age though, the cavalry flattens out a bit. Without the paladin or even the last cavalry armor upgrade, the knight line is pretty average at best. As I talked about earlier, the hussars are a bit situational and not as great at raiding as you might think, but they're still quite strong, especially in melee fighting. Considering their top tier cavalry throughout the middle game, I'm still convinced they're an A-, just behind the Persians and quite a ways behind the Huns and Magyars. You might disagree if you think the last armor upgrade is super important to have, but I'm trying to look at all of the ages instead of just the post-Imperial Age. Looking at Siege now, Siege Onagers, Rams, and Heavy Scorpions are a pretty nice set of options. Normally bombard cannons are useful to have for mobility's sake, but they're not really missed here after the unique technology. Comparing them with Celts and Koreans for best siege is pretty tough since they all have great bonuses that make them great in different ways and in different situations. They're certainly top tier though, and it's an easy A for me. Moving on to the Navy, their strong early food economy means more villagers can go on wood, or you can have a faster advance time, so they're above average on water maps early on and have all the text they need in the late game without really being over the top. There might be some better choices if you know you're heading into a water game, but Mongols certainly hold their own, and overall I'd say it's a B+ for water. I would feel confident going into a full random map with Mongols, knowing it wouldn't be a disaster if the map was water heavy. Taking a quick look at the monks, well, no redemption means they're not going to be converting any buildings or siege, and no block printing means they're a bit more exposed when converting units. They also have low health and are missing the tech to speed up their faith regeneration. The one bright side is they do have atonement, so they can maybe steal somebody else's better monks. Overall, it's a C- for me. Looking at defenses now, they have below average towers, no architecture, heated shot, or treadmill crane, and that's not a promising start. They do at least get bracer, fortified walls, and siege engineers, so that's all good. I'd probably consider the faster siege a bit of a defensive boost as well, since the mangonel can be a lifesaver when you're pinned in your base by a large number of units. The Mangudai are also anti-siege, so your towns are going to be harder to take out than your opponent might expect. I'd give them a B for defenses. Taking a last look at the economy, they have a great early economy, as I've said a few times, both because of the scouting and the hunting, which can have a huge ripple effect on your economy throughout the whole game. That's balanced with missing crop rotation and two-man saw in the Imperial Age, so you're not going to be as population efficient with your villagers in the late stages of the game. Mongols obviously excel in maps like Black Forest because of their untouchable Mangudai, strong hussars, and warp factor siege. So personally, I usually don't notice a weak economy in the late game, and I'm usually not turning over a ton of units. You'll notice you tend to have fantastic kill ratios in long games as Mongols, and sometimes even when you lose. So I'm happy to give the Mongols an A- for economy, even with the missing final techs and no late game eco bonuses. So that's the Mongols. They're one of the few civilizations I can think of that thrives on Arabia thanks to a great early game, and also thrives in Black Forest because of great siege and their unique unit. They make for a great ally with their team bonus, and are dangerous on 1 vs 1 because of their fast, consistent starts. Their only real weakness is in the late Castle Age and early Imperial before they get out their very expensive late game units. Some good allies for them are probably the Spanish for the gold to keep making Mangudai, Koreans for their onager range boost, which would make for some really intense siege onagers against just about any ranged unit, and maybe the Huns for the fast rushing combination. Personally, I also like the idea of them paired with Japanese because of the strong halberdiers and skirmishers, which Mongols lack, and the samurai can also be used to counter the Huskarl, which is a major weakness for the Mangudai. There's probably others too, but those are the main civilizations that come to mind. But that's all for this one. Thanks for watching guys, and I'll see you next time.